Hey there, weary historian tuning in tonight. You're no Roman aristocrat, no polished senator strutting in a toga, no battle-scarred centurion lounging in a villa stuffed with war trophies. You're Gaulish, dirt-poor, half-starved, your calloused palms splintered from labor, your tunic crawling with fleas, led by a chieftain who mistakes volume for wisdom. And now, Julius Caesar is coming. Uninvited, unforgiving. You'll watch your gods go mute. You'll choke on the smoke of your burning village. And if you're lucky, you'll fade into a footnote in some Roman's victory speech. Before the cavalry tramples your world under the weight of Rome's hunger, do me one favor. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing who's drifting into dreams while empires rise and ordinary lives get crushed. Want early access to more of these grim history tales? Ad-free audio episodes? Or just want to toss a coin to your storyteller? Check the Patreon link below. But for now, lean back. Get comfortable. Let's begin. You're no warrior. Not really. You've held a spear, swung it at a tree trunk once, even skewered a squirrel by accident. But no one taught you formations, drills, or which end to point at the enemy when smoke blinds you. You're 18, maybe 20. Who's counting? The village elder claims you were born during flood season when the river swallowed the grain fields and a black goat birthed twins. That narrows it down to 5 possible years, depending on which flood and which goat. But you've got most of your teeth. Your knees still bend. Your hands haven't stiffened from winters. So you're young enough for hauling water, chopping wood, and getting yelled at for forgetting to latch the gate. Your village clings to a hillside, half mud, half wood, half accident. Not quite a fortress, but high enough to spot trouble before the flatlanders do. The palisade? Crooked logs lashed with twine. Gaps wide enough for a boar to trot through if it's feeling bold. The gate creaks in the wind. The wind never stops. They say the gods like the noise, proof you still exist. You suspect the gods would prefer fewer splinters. Your family's hut is wedged between the pig pen and the cursed well. Someone drowned in it, and the priest declared the water haunted. The roof leaks in 3 places, though never the same spots twice. Your father died in a tribal skirmish. Or was it a hunting accident? Or did he just walk into the woods one day and never return? Your mother doesn't talk about it. She sharpens knives with a glare that makes debtors pay without argument. You sleep on a moss-stuffed mat, curled like a dying fern, listening to pigs grunt and neighbors argue about snow. Your days blur. Chop wood until your arms feel like straw, haul buckets until your spine hums, mend fences, scrape bark. Avoid your drunk uncle who thinks every meal is a chance to remind you you've yet to kill a man, father a child, or memorize the tribal songs. He sings them anyway, loud, wrong, sometimes naked. You've begged the gods to shut him up. They seem content to let him torture the rest of you. The gods? Complicated. They live in bones, stones, tangled ivy. You've never seen them, but you've watched priests talk to trees. Close enough. You've offered acorns, feathers, drops of blood, just a finger prick and a promise not to steal this week. Some say the gods watch. Others say they're asleep. One man claimed they'd moved south for winter. He died of stomach rot 3 days later. So no one says that anymore. Your tribe is one of many. You try not to think about how many. Some wear cloaks, some don't. Some shave, others braid their chest hair. Everyone agrees pigs are sacred. No one agrees why. Sacred? Cursed? Maybe both. One elder insists pigs are reincarnated warriors. Another says they're coward souls. You don't argue. You toss them scraps and hope they don't bite your ankles again. News travels slow. No scrolls. No maps. Just notched sticks counting goats owed. When something big happens, a sweaty messenger gallops in, shouts about distant armies or bad omens, then vanishes before questions. Usually, the village shrugs. Distant wars don't matter here. Until they do. Lately, the messengers arrive more often, hollow-eyed, missing boots. They don't shout now. They whisper. They talk about columns of men in metal shells moving like river ice. Slow, unstoppable. Camps that build themselves overnight. Roads that appear where none existed. Villages that vanish. Names drift in the whispers. Aduatuci, Helvetii, Belgi. Some you've heard, some you haven't. The tone's the same, fear clipped short by exhaustion. Then, one evening, as the sun bleeds into the trees and your breath fogs the air, a rider comes. A stranger. His horse foams at the mouth. His face is dust gray. He doesn't dismount, just leans forward, eyes too wide, voice ragged. He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. Rome has crossed into your lands. You've heard of Rome. Who hasn't? The swollen belly of the world. A city so rich it paves roads with stone and politics with blood. They say its soldiers wear matching shoes. Its horses wear armor. Its camps breathe fire. They say its leader, Caesar, or whatever monster calls itself Caesar this week, speaks with a tongue of gold and steel, offering peace with one hand, delivering slaughter with the other. You picture him pale, wrapped in a red cloak, a man with no gods, just hunger. He won't care about your tribe's name. He'll mispronounce it, call you barbarian, and move on. The rider doesn't stay. He gallops to the next village, spreading panic like spilled wine. The elders argue in circles. Fight. Flee. One suggests diplomacy. The others laugh. Your chieftain claims he saw this coming. You know he's lying. Last year, he thought a thunderstorm meant pigs could fly. He won't handle this well. That night, the fires burn late. The drums stay silent. Even your drunk uncle mutters into his cup, haunted. You lie awake on your moss-stuffed mat, staring at the thatch, listening to the wind sneak through the walls. An owl hoots. The pigs snore. The stars shiver. And in the quiet between breaths, you realize something terrible. Caesar is coming. And this time, the gods might not be enough. The next morning, no one says it outright, but everyone knows what's coming. The pigs are restless, snorting and circling their pen like they sense the storm before it breaks. Crows gather in the trees like gossiping old women, their black eyes sharp with anticipation. Even the mist clings thicker than usual, as if trying to shield the village from whatever horror lumbers toward it through the distant hills. You chop wood without being asked. Though the axe feels heavier today, it strikes landing duller against the logs. You avoid your uncle, who's suddenly puffing his chest like some battle-hardened veteran. Never mind that he once vomited during a boar hunt. Your mother sharpens her knives again, slower this time, her gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond the doorway. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. By midday, it's official. The chieftain calls an assembly, which is just a fancy word for standing in the muddy clearing while he waves a stick and shouts. He claims the gods have spoken, though you suspect it was the wine jug doing the talking. The time has come, he declares, for the tribe to rise, to fight, to defend your ancestors' land, your sacred trees, your damn pigs. He stumbles over the details, but the crowd roars anyway, which he takes as agreement. A few elders exchange glances like men watching a cart roll toward a cliff, but they stay silent. They hand you a spear. It's bent, not dramatically, just enough to make aiming a philosophical question. The shafts crack near the base, repaired with twine and desperate hope. Your shield is a wooden disc the size of a platter, painted with a chipped spiral. You're not sure if it's meant to block arrows or serve cheese. There's no ceremony, no drums, no blessings, just the quiet understanding that if you can hold a weapon and don't have open sores, you're a warrior now. You don't feel like one. Your tunic still smells of moss and sweat. Your hands shake when no one's looking. You try to stand tall as the priest walks by, muttering half-remembered prayers and flicking water that might or might not be holy. The last time he blessed something, it was a basket of turnips that rotted anyway. The war band assembles like a bad idea taking shape. Men you've known your whole life, and others you've avoided on purpose. Some carry real weapons, swords, axes, bows. Others show up with farming tools and the confidence of people who've never been punched by a Roman shield. One wears a helmet made from a goat skull. Another has no shoes but insists the gods will protect his feet. A few grunt in wolf pelts, their breath reeking of last night's mead. No one's in charge. Or rather, everyone thinks they are. The chieftain claims you're joining an alliance. Never mind who's in it or why they'd bother. There's a meeting point in the forest, he says. Messengers from other tribes will be there. Allies, he calls them. Brothers in blood. You've met these brothers before. One stabbed your cousin over a market dispute. Another stole your tribe's grain last winter and blamed wolves. Now you're supposed to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in glorious resistance. You try to look inspired. Mostly, you look nauseous. Before leaving, your mother presses a pouch of dried berries and an herb-soaked cloth strip into your hands. She doesn't say goodbye. Your family's never been the hugging type. But the gesture lands heavy. It says, come back if you can. If not, at least bleed somewhere decent. Your uncle offers you a sip of something vile from a clay cup. It burns your throat and gives you instant hiccups. For courage, he says. You suspect it's punishment for not laughing at his stories. You set out before sunrise, following the old hunting trail that winds through pines and dips along the stream. You've walked this path before, with fishing nets, with baskets, never with a weapon you don't know how to use and a pack that smells like regret. The war band stretches behind you in a loose, disorganized line. Some sing, some mumble, some argue over who gets to lead the charge. Never mind that no one's decided what the charge will even look like. You march anyway because turning back would mean explaining yourself, and you're not ready for that. By midday, you reach the rendezvous point, a muddy clearing flanked by sagging trees and half-frozen puddles. Other tribes have already arrived. You can tell by the shouting. They've pitched tents in clusters, separated by dialect, suspicion, and the occasional drawn blade. Everyone pretends to be united, but it's the kind of unity that vanishes if someone touches the wrong horse. You recognize faces from trade days and funerals. Others are strangers painted in unfamiliar patterns, their furs smelling like animals you've never seen. Their weapons are better. Their sneers are worse. Your chieftain strides into the mess like he owns it, starts talking to a tall man with a braided beard and too many rings, mixing diplomacy, bravado, and outright lies. You linger with the younger fighters, pretending not to listen. Words drift through the cold air. Caesar. Horses. Tribute. There's no plan. Just anger hammered into rough syllables and slapped together with the kind of optimism only men without maps can afford. Someone passes around food, hard bread and strips of meat that could be boar, horse, or wishful thinking dried into jerky. You chew slowly, grateful for something to do with your hands. Warriors from another tribe challenge yours to a wrestling match. One of your men accepts, loses instantly, and claims he slipped. Tension flares. Blades are touched, but not drawn. A priest mutters about the gods watching. You suspect the gods are laughing. That night, the fires burn low. No one wants to draw attention. Roman scouts could be anywhere. You huddle with your group under a stretched hide, your breath visible, fingers numb. Someone whispers about Roman camps, the trenches, the crucifixions. Someone else tells him to shut up. No one sleeps much. You dream of red cloaks and marching feet and the sound of your own footsteps in snow that isn't there. In the morning, you march again, not toward home, not toward a hunt, but towards something vast, cold, and final. The alliance moves with momentum rather than order, a ragged mass of warriors from 5 or 6 tribes bristling with weapons and half-remembered grudges. They argue over whose gods are stronger. They bicker about direction. They compete over who can spit the farthest. But they all agree on one thing. Caesar must be stopped. You don't know how that's supposed to happen. No one does. You're marching into a war you didn't start, for a cause you barely understand, led by men who once got lost trying to find the sacred spring 2 hills over. You grip your bent spear, adjust your dinner platter shield, and keep moving. The mud sucks at your boots. The cold seeps into your bones. And somewhere ahead, beyond the trees, beyond the next bend in the path, the eagle waits. You are a soldier now, poorly equipped, poorly led, poorly prepared, but a soldier nonetheless. The forest thins just after sunrise. The trees stop pressing so close together, the air opening up like a held breath finally released. You hear them before you see them. The rhythmic clink of metal, the creak of leather, the synchronized strike of boots on frozen earth. Not 100 paces ahead, between the mist-laced trunks, they appear. Lines of men unlike any you've seen. They move as one, some monstrous insect made of shields and sandals. Red cloaks hang stiff from their shoulders. Helmets gleam dull silver. No one speaks. No one breaks formation. Even their eyes stay locked forward, fixed on some invisible point beyond you. For a moment, you forget to breathe. You've heard the stories, terrible stories, but seeing them is worse. They don't look human. They look designed. Your warband doesn't wait for orders. Orders were never part of the plan. Someone yells, and it begins. Loud, clumsy, stupid. Warriors surge forward in a ragged wave, brandishing spears, axes, swords, bellowing insults in half a dozen dialects. You're caught in the current, feet stumbling to keep up, heart hammering, stomach coiled. Part of you screams to stop. Another part shoves you forward, because if you fall behind now, you'll be trampled by your own. The Romans don't move. They let you come. Their front line kneels slightly, shields rising in perfect unison. Then, something strange happens. Your comrade, the one in the wolf skin with too many teeth, vanishes. One moment he's beside you, roaring. The next, gone. A blur of motion, and you realize too late. Something sharp has torn through the line ahead. The Romans are throwing spears. Pila, you'll later learn. Long, heavy, barbed things designed to punch through flesh and ego alike. You don't know what hits you first. The copper stench of blood, the scream that twists into a wet gurgle, or the sight of a man spinning backward, his arm no longer attached to anything useful. You keep running. You're too close now. Maybe momentum will carry you through. Maybe if you hit them hard enough, fast enough, you can break their lines, scatter them, prove the story's wrong. You're wrong. You slam into the Roman shield wall with all the force your half-frozen legs can muster. It's like hitting a tree, one that hits back. A shield rams your chest, knocking your breath out. A short sword flashes at your side. Someone screams. You barely raise your own shield before something heavy crashes against it, wood splintering. You drop to one knee, duck instinctively. Feel wind brush your ear where a blade should have landed. The formation shifts. Testudo, though you don't know the name yet. Shields overlap. Spears jab in precise angles. Your people flail, swinging wildly, trying to break through with brute force and loud threats. The Romans say nothing. They just grind forward, their line rippling with terrible efficiency. Every movement practiced, every motion deliberate. You see a man die from a cut so clean he doesn't realize it for 2 full seconds. Another warrior tries to leap over the front line, shouting about glory. A Roman stabs him midair and steps aside before the body hits the ground. You fall back, barely standing. Your arm throbs where a shield cracked your elbow. Your vision swims. Mud splashes your face, mixing with blood and something else, fear. Not someone else's. Yours. A horn sounds. Not yours. A Roman horn. Cold, sharp, final. Their second line steps forward, not charging, just advancing. You've never seen men fight like this. Your side pushes in wild bursts, then collapses. There's flows like water, sealing every gap before it opens. You try to find your chieftain. He's gone, or hiding, or dead. It doesn't matter. Your lines are breaking. Your warriors are falling back, some still shouting, some just running. You trip over a corpse. You recognize the tunic. It belonged to a boy who once traded you mushrooms for honey. His eyes are wide, staring at a sky he no longer believes in. You stand. You turn. You realize there's no one behind you anymore. The Roman line keeps advancing. Steady, unbothered, as if this is just another task to complete before lunch. You run, not with pride, not with strategy, just with your legs. Your shield is heavy, useless. You drop it. It lands in the mud with a dull thud, splattered with blood that might be yours. Your spear is gone. You don't remember losing it. You don't remember much except that if you don't keep running, you won't live long enough to regret it. The forest that once felt familiar now seems endless. Branches claw at your arms. Roots snag your feet. You stumble. You fall. You scramble up again. Lungs tearing at your ribs. Heart trying to punch its way out. Behind you, the sounds of battle fade, replaced by the sickening quiet of organized slaughter, the kind that comes after the screaming stops. You don't stop running until the light starts to fade. By then, your boots are soaked, your legs trembling, your thoughts flickering like a guttering candle. You collapse against a tree and vomit into the moss. Nothing heroic, nothing glorious, just bile and regret and the sharp sting of your own inadequacy. Others stagger past, some limping, some bleeding. A few glance your way, but say nothing. There's no talk of strategy now. No fiery speeches. Just exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones and whispers that this isn't a setback. It's the beginning of the end. You don't know how many escaped. Not many. You heard a horn calling retreat, but by then it was more suggestion than command. Your sides shattered like rotten wood. You saw warriors drop their weapons mid-swing, turn, and vanish into the trees without shame. Some will call them cowards. You'll call them alive. That night, you huddle with a few others near a fire no one lights. The moon stares down through bare branches, indifferent. Someone mumbles a prayer to a god whose name you forgot last winter. Someone else curses Rome in a language you barely understand. No one talks about going back. There's nothing to go back to. You make it back to the village just before nightfall on the third day, legs wobbling, head buzzing with the sickly fog of shame and exhaustion. No horns announce your return. No welcome awaits. The gate creaks open like it's surprised to see anyone still breathing. Most who greet you wear the same expression, a blank, quiet relief tinged with disappointment. You're alive, but no one wants to ask why. Survivors rarely come home with glory. They come home with limps and silence. The war band didn't just lose, it unraveled. What was supposed to be resistance turned into a running joke, then just running. The alliance is gone, scattered into the woods or buried in shallow ditches. Your chieftain is nowhere to be seen. Either he's hiding, dead, or inventing a new version of events where he wrestled 3 Roman scouts simultaneously. You hope he's dead. At least that would be honest. Inside the village, the fires burn low and voices stay hushed. The pigs have been moved closer to the huts, as if their sacred snorting might scare off invaders. The women look at you like they're counting your limbs. The old men just nod. They've seen this before. Maybe not with Rome, but with someone. There's always someone. The conqueror's face changes, but the outcome stays the same. By morning, the elders argue loudly in the village square, right by the post where thieves used to be tied. They circle each other like dogs with stiff backs and bad memories. One says fortify the hill and fight to the last man. Another says send tribute. A third claims the gods demand a sacrifice, preferably someone young and unlucky. You volunteer to fetch water instead. You sit on a log with your cousin while the old men bark. He's a year younger, but still has the optimism of someone who hasn't seen a Roman shield wall up close. He talks of reorganizing warriors, forging better weapons, rallying more tribes. You nod, but say nothing. You haven't the heart to explain how fast courage leaks from a man when his ribs are cracked and his friends die face down in mud. Eventually, the shouting stops, not because they've decided, but because word arrives from a neighboring village. Another tribe tried holding out, built barricades, refused to pay. The Romans arrived before dawn, surrounded them, gave 2 choices, surrender or burn. They chose poorly. What's left of them is still smoking. Survivors, if any, will be dragged south in chains. The message is clear. Resistance means erasure. Your tribe chooses diplomacy, not out of cowardice, though some will whisper it, but realism. You've no warriors left to bluff. The young are shaken. The old can barely lift axes. The best fighters are missing fingers. You could hold out a week, maybe 2, then what? Starve in the snow? Watch huts burn while Caesar scribbles notes about your stubborn barbarism. So you prepare an offering, not a gift, but obligation dressed in ceremony. Grain comes first, every family scraping their stores, even those already chewing bark. Then livestock, goats, pigs, 2 donkeys, and 1 sheep that bites everyone within reach. The priests chant over each animal. The beasts don't care. Neither will the Romans. They'll take the meat, not the prayers. Then comes the gold. There's little, a few rings, trinkets, 2 dented armlets stolen from a merchant years ago. They're polished until they shine like wealth instead of desperation. You've heard Romans weigh tribute. You wonder if your offerings will even tip their scales. But the worst part isn't grain or gold. It's the hostages. No one calls them that, of course. They're tokens of goodwill, symbols of cooperation. Caesar's men have 1,000 pretty words for "give us your sons, or we'll take them." The elders debate quietly now. It must be someone important, but not too important. Young, but not indispensable. Someone the tribe can afford to lose, but not so low-born it's insulting. In other words, someone like your cousin. He doesn't resist, doesn't cry, doesn't argue. He nods when told, then walks off to pack a small bag. He's always been obedient in that way that makes people proud and uncomfortable. You follow him to his hut, unsure what to say. He notices your silence, smiles, says, "It's better than dying." You try to believe him. You really do. That night, the whole village gathers, not for a feast, there's no food, but a stiff, hollow ceremony. The priest blesses the offerings. The chieftain, suddenly reappearing with a suspiciously fresh bandage, gives a speech about duty and honor. He doesn't meet anyone's eyes. You keep yours on the dirt. In the morning, a Roman officer arrives flanked by men who barely glance at your people as they take the tribute. Grain is loaded, livestock herded away, gold weighed without comment. Then the hostages are called. Your cousin is third in line. He keeps his head high, lips pressed thin, jaw set like he's already carved in stone. The officer nods once, turns his back. The hostages are marched out without fanfare. No one says goodbye. The tribe doesn't allow it. Partly because farewells feel like funerals, partly because if the Romans see how much it hurts, they might ask for more. A few days after the hostages vanish down the road, the Romans return, this time not with swords drawn, but with wax tablets, quills, and quiet authority. They don't yell. They don't threaten. They don't need to. Their arrival feels more like weather than invasion, cold, inevitable, and utterly indifferent to how you feel about it. A detachment of soldiers plants themselves around the village perimeter like human fence posts. Then the scribes follow, young men with narrow eyes and thinner mouths, draped in dull cloaks that smell of ink and arrogance. You're told not to interfere. Not that you would. No one here is in the mood for another lesson in Roman efficiency. So you do what you've done since the First War horn echoed through these trees. You make yourself small. You chop wood. You mend fences. You avoid eye contact. You try not to breathe too loud. The scribes begin with the grain. They move from hut to hut with little scales and long questions, recording every sack, every barrel, every crusty handful of stored flour. If it smells like food or used to be food, it's measured. They don't ask permission. They don't explain. If someone hesitates, a soldier clears his throat. No one hesitates after that. Next come the animals. Pigs, goats, chickens, donkeys, counted, tagged, sometimes taken. There's no negotiation. Complain that a sow is pregnant or that a goat is your only milk source. They'll write it down, nod thoughtfully, and take it anyway. A woman tries protesting when they take her last hen. She ends up in the mud with a split lip and a cracked rib. After that, no one protests. You stand there like everyone else, quiet, stiff, calculating how long you can survive without the things you once owned. They move on to tools, axes, hammers, sickles, anything metal or remotely useful. Some items are taken for inventory, others requisitioned for Roman use, which is just bureaucracy's way of saying ours now. Your neighbor loses both his carts. Another man watches as soldiers carry off his anvil. No receipts are offered. The priest says it's part of the tribute agreement. You remember when he promised peace was coming? You consider reminding him. You don't. Then they start counting people. The census, they call it. A word you've never heard but now can't escape. The scribes go hut to hut asking how many adults live there, how many children, how many are fit for labor. You tell them your name. They write something different. You try to correct it. They say it doesn't matter. One scribe pats your shoulder like you're a sick animal and moves on. They tally your age, your job, your marital status, how many teeth you have, whether your feet are calloused. You lie, of course, about injuries, illnesses, debts. They seem to expect that. They write anyway. You start to wonder if the whole exercise is less about gathering information and more about teaching you something, that they can know everything about you without actually knowing you. Soon, New rules appear, not shouted, not posted, just whispered by soldiers and repeated by scribes. You can't hunt beyond a certain radius without permission. You can't hold meetings larger than 12 people. You can't wear blades in public. You can't light fires after sundown unless inspected. You can't pray too loudly, or to the wrong gods, or in the wrong way. You can't ask what too loudly means. The priest pushes back, just a little. Not with weapons, just words. He holds a rain ritual in the village center like always. Modest, harmless, traditional, but it involves a horn. The horn is deemed aggressive. Roman soldiers drag him away before he finishes the chant. He returns the next day, hunched, bleeding. The day after that, he doesn't return at all. They say it was an accident. You suspect it was a message. You don't ask which part. Then the taxes begin. No one explains the system. No lesson, just demands. Every household owes a percentage of grain, livestock, and coin. You don't know how the percentages are calculated. The Romans do. They have tables, charts, strange blocks of numbers that supposedly reflect fairness and logic. To you, it looks like punishment disguised as math. You're told you can pay in labor if you lack goods. So you work longer hours, colder days, deeper cuts. You chop more wood. You carry stones from the stream for road construction. The Romans call it infrastructure. You call it lifting rocks until your spine cracks. They feed you a bowl of watery stew at midday and expect gratitude. You give them silence. Your hands crack from cold. Your boots wear thin. You share meals with your mother and uncle, though none of you speak much anymore. Your cousin's absence sits at the table like a ghost. No one mentions him. That would invite too many questions. You try not to wonder if he's eating better than you are. You hope he is. Then you feel ashamed for hoping. Sometimes at night, you dream of your old life. Not because it was better, but because it was yours. The freedom to walk into woods without being followed. The feeling of owning your own tools. The right to speak to gods in your own tongue without fear someone will overhear and write it down wrong. You miss the arguments, the noise, the half-drunk storytelling around fires. Rome hasn't killed your culture, not yet, but it's carving into it, slow and deep, like someone trying to make a table from a living tree. Your neighbors start to change. Some embrace the new order, speak Latin phrases with clumsy pride. They talk about how Romans ended tribal feuds, how roads make trade easier. You want to believe them, but it's hard to focus on roads when your hands bleed and your gods go silent. A few men are drafted, volunteers, according to scribes, scouts, translators, laborers for the next campaign. Your neighbor's son disappears with a satchel and a promise to write, though he doesn't know how. Another man returns after a month, limping, silent. He won't say what he saw, just sits by the fire, drinking until he forgets how to hold the cup. You keep your head down. You work. You pay. You pretend the rules make sense. Some days, you catch yourself calling the Roman officers sir. Other days, you forget your cousin's voice. You try not to think about what that means. Caesar calls it order. The scribes call it progress. The soldiers call it peace. You call it a slow, choking quiet, the kind that settles over a place not because it's calm, but because it's been smothered. And still, the taxes rise. It begins with rumors, not in your village, but in the markets, among travelers, in the hushed voices behind closed doors. Another tribe has revolted. No one knows which one at first. Some say the Carnuts. Others insist it was the Eburones. The details shift with each telling, like mud underfoot. All you know is this. Somewhere, someone decided they'd rather die than keep paying taxes with their blood. You try not to care, not because you approve of Rome, but because rebellion feels like a luxury. It's for people with stronger backs, fuller bellies, better plans. Your days are already swallowed by work, by silence, by a schedule you never agreed to. You chop and carry and dig and scrape. At night, you sleep like a sack of wet bark, too tired to dream beyond tomorrow's chores. You didn't join the revolt. You didn't even know there was one until it was over. But that doesn't matter. Rome decides you're guilty anyway. It starts small. A patrol rides through unannounced, checking stores, counting heads again. They ask questions no one can answer. Who crossed the river 2 nights ago? Why was smoke seen from the ridge? Why are your livestock numbers down? You shrug. You defer. You smile too much or not enough. One old woman says she saw strangers in the woods. She gets a boot in the ribs for her trouble. Another claims to have heard Latin spoken near the eastern stream. She's ignored. Rome already knows what it wants to believe. The soldiers return in greater numbers the next day. This time, they don't bring scribes. They bring torches. No one says the word punishment, but it hangs in the air like smoke before flame. A junior officer reads from a scroll, badly translated, half memorized. It accuses your village of aiding insurgents, of seditious negligence, of interfering with imperial justice. You don't know half the words, but the tone is clear. The Romans are angry, and they've brought enough rope to make the point stick. Your chieftain tries to explain. He swears loyalty. He swears ignorance. He swears on the gods, on his blood, on Caesar himself. It makes no difference. The officer nods, bored, and orders the sweep to begin. One by one, homes are turned inside out. Storage huts emptied. Baskets kicked open. Clay jars shattered against stones. A child's doll is stabbed. Whether for practice or symbolism isn't clear. You stay near the edge, watching with your mouth closed and hands tucked behind your back. Your friend Arnix isn't so lucky. He's the kind who never learned when to stay quiet, even when it mattered. He mouths off when a soldier kicks over his chicken coop, says something about Roman courage hiding behind helmets. The soldiers don't argue. They just drag him to the village center and hang him from the gatepost. No trial, no warning, just the sound of creaking wood and a silence no one dares break. You freeze. You don't help. You don't move. You watch him die like everyone else, paralyzed by fear and the awful knowledge that it could just as easily be you. His feet twitch for too long. His mother screams once, then stops herself, shoving a fist into her mouth as if silence might protect her now. The soldiers leave him there for hours, a message nailed to a familiar face. That night, the air feels thinner. The fire in your hearth sputters without permission. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they're done, if this was all, if the gods still remember your name. Your ankle aches from the day's labor. Your fingers throb with splinters. Everything smells faintly of smoke. Then the dogs start barking. You don't wait for orders. You don't wait to see the torches. You just run, out the back, through the pig pen, into the trees. Your boots are by the door, but there's no time. You're barefoot in the dark, branches clawing your legs, roots catching your heels. Behind you, the shouting starts, Latin words you can't understand, punctuated by screams you wish you didn't. You slip down a ridge, twist your ankle hard enough to cry out. You bite your tongue instead. Somewhere to your left, another figure crashes through the underbrush. You don't look to see who. Every rustle sounds like death. You make for the old hunting trail, the one you used as a boy, before you knew what Conquest smelled like. The moon barely lights your way, but you know the bends by memory. Each crooked tree, each sharp turn. By dawn, you're shivering beneath a fallen log with one hand wrapped around a broken spearhead and the other pressed to your chest to calm the coughing. Your fever has returned. Or maybe it's something new. Either way, your skin burns and your breath rattles. You haven't eaten since yesterday. The last thing you drank came from a puddle that smelled like frog spawn. You don't know who else made it out. You don't know what's left of the village. You tell yourself maybe they spared the women, the children, the old. Then you remember Arnix, and the rope, and the bored look on the officer's face. You stop pretending. Eventually, others stagger past, some limping, some bleeding, all wearing the same hollow look of men who've outlived their world. A few glance your way, but say nothing. There's no talk of revenge now, no boasts of future glory. Just the quiet understanding that survival itself has become the rebellion. You don't know how long you lie there, days maybe, chewing bark, sipping rainwater, smearing mud over your skin to mask your scent. When you finally crawl from your hiding place, it's not courage that moves you, but the realization that staying means starving. The forest feels different now, not just empty, but emptied. The birds sing too loud, as if compensating for the silence elsewhere. You follow the stream downstream, not because you hope to find anything, but because flowing water at least suggests direction. Then you see the smoke. Not the thin tendrils of a cooking fire, but the thick, black columns of something larger. Your village, or what's left of it. The Romans didn't just burn it, they dismantled it. The huts are reduced to charcoal outlines, the palisades scattered like broken teeth. The well has been filled in with debris. A few bodies lie where they fell, already bloated and half covered by leaves. You recognize some. The miller's daughter, the old man who used to mend fishing nets. Most are strangers. The ones you know, you wish you didn't. You find your uncle's drinking cup lying in the mud, somehow unbroken. You take it, not out of sentiment, but because it's better than cupping water in your hands. There's no one left to mourn with. No one left to bury the dead. The Romans are gone. Off to the next village, dragging their particular brand of justice behind them like a sack of stones. The silence they leave behind is thicker than the smoke. You wander for half a day, hoping to find someone, anyone, but the roads are empty. Even the crows seem to have moved on. You spend one last night near what used to be your hearth, curled in the ashes with your cousin's old blanket pulled over your shoulders, staring at the sky through the hole in the roof. By morning, you stop waiting. The rebellion doesn't find you. You find it. It starts as a whisper, a message scratched into bark at a crossroads. A familiar tattoo glimpsed on an unfamiliar arm. A group of men huddled too close in the forest shadows. You don't ask questions. You just follow. There are others like you, survivors, drifters, men whose lives were smothered under Roman order and now have nothing left but the desire to take something back. Some talk of justice. Others want vengeance. A few just want to swing an axe again before they starve. You're not sure where you fit. You're too tired to care. The resistance isn't what you expected. No grand army, no noble speeches. Just ragged bands moving through the trees like ghosts, striking where they can, disappearing when they must. They fight like wolves, messy, fast, never head on. You're given a real blade, short, chipped, rusted, but steel. You clean it with your sleeve and a handful of moss. Try not to look too grateful. The camp is hidden deep in the forest, nestled between two ridges. It's not a fortress, but it's safer than anywhere else. There are maybe 30 of you, some from proper tribes like the Aedui or the Carnuts, others just wanderers with blood under their fingernails and no plans for winter. You recognize a woman from a neighboring village. Neither of you mentions the past. That was before the burning, before the counting, before the silence. There's no real leader here. Orders pass through grunts and gestures. Raids are planned in low murmurs around the fire. The targets are simple: Roman patrols, supply wagons, tax collectors. Sometimes you steal food, sometimes weapons, sometimes nothing more than the satisfaction of making them nervous. When it works, it feels like revenge. When it doesn't, you lose another face you barely knew. You sharpen your blade beside men who don't ask questions. Trust is rationed like food. You sleep with your back to a tree, knife in hand, one eye half open. Not because you expect betrayal, but because expecting anything else is a luxury you can't afford. The woman from the next village warns you not to eat anything left unattended. She says one of the new arrivals keeps slipping off into the woods and returning with food too clean to have been foraged. You learn to watch for certain signs: a scout who lingers too long on the ridge, a fire that burns too straight, the way some men suddenly stop complaining about hunger. You don't speak much. There's nothing helpful to say. Then the name reaches you: Vercingetorix. At first, it's just a word muttered by a one-eyed man sharpening a spear. He says it like a prayer or maybe a bet. You repeat it later when no one's listening, testing the syllables in your mouth. It tastes like hope, or at least better branding than anything your chieftain ever came up with. They say he's uniting the tribes, pulling together old enemies, old debts, old pride. They call him Dux Bellorum, a war leader of the sort that comes once in a generation, if you're lucky. Some say he's a visionary. Others just say he hasn't lost yet. Word spreads that he's gathering forces in the south, that he's planning something big, bigger than raids, bigger than revenge. A real uprising. The kind Caesar might actually feel when he wakes up in the morning. You're told to prepare. You don't know what that means. No one does. So you sharpen your blade again. You patch your boots with leather stolen from a Roman saddle. You learn to tie knots that won't slip in the ring. You also learn who to avoid. The loud ones. The ones who talk about glory and honor and destiny. They're the first to run when the fighting gets ugly. You stick with the quiet ones. The men and women who've already lost too much to lie to themselves. They don't promise survival. They just pass you an extra strip of dried meat without asking why your hands shake. One night, as the fire burns low and the wind whistles through the branches, a scout returns with word of a Roman caravan moving through the next valley, lightly guarded, heavy with supplies. You're chosen to go, not because you're special, because you're standing close when the orders are given. You nod. You check your blade one last time. You don't feel brave. You feel resigned. You march out before dawn, moving like shadows through the trees. The cold bites at your hands, the kind that seeps past calluses and settles in the bones. Mud oozes through the cracks in your boots with every step. That old pain in your ankle, the one that never quite healed, flares up again. But you press forward anyway, because what else is there? The scout leads you to a ridge overlooking the valley. Below, the Roman caravan crawls along the road like a fat beetle. 2 wagons, a dozen soldiers, maybe more hidden in the tree line. The woman beside you counts under her breath. You watch the way the soldiers walk, not the stiff march of legionaries, but the loose gait of auxiliaries. Mercenaries, the expendables. Someone passes around a skin of something bitter. You take a sip. It burns all the way down, but it steadies your hands. The scout points to a bend in the road where the trees grow close. That's where you'll hit them. You don't speak. No one does. The only sounds are the rustle of adjusting gear and the occasional sniff of a runny nose. The birds have gone quiet. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. Then the signal comes, not a shout, not a horn, just the scout spitting over the ridge. You move. It's over faster than you expected. You're not proud of how it happens. One of the guards is no older than you were when this all began. He reaches for a horn, but you're faster. You catch him in the gut, and he drops with a sound that doesn't sound human. The fire starts soon after, dry straw from the wagons lit with pitch-soaked rags. The flames leap high and greedy. You throw sacks of Roman rations into the inferno, watching them blacken and curl. The soldiers who aren't dead flee. You let them. They'll carry word back to their commanders, and that's the point. Fear is the second best weapon you have. Fire is the first. Afterward, you sit on a rock near the tree line, staring at the blaze with a blankness you've grown used to. The others laugh and slap shoulders, chewing stolen jerky and passing around a wineskin. You stay quiet, not out of guilt, you're long past that. Just exhaustion, the kind that sleep won't fix. The woman from the next village sits beside you. She says nothing for a long time, then mutters, "We'll pay for this." You nod. Of course you will. You've known that since the first time you saw a Roman line form and realized how little you mattered in the face of geometry. But still, you do it again. You fight because it's the only thing left. Because after your home burned and your gods went silent and your cousin disappeared into the Roman machine, there wasn't anything else. No fields to tend, no stories to pass on, just smoke and ash and the long howl of a people being smothered. The camp celebrates that night, if you can call it celebration. There's no singing, no dancing, just men eating their fill for the first time in months and trying not to think about tomorrow. Someone produces a skin of decent wine, real Roman stuff, stolen gods nowhere. It tastes like vinegar and victory. You don't sleep. Not really. You lie with your back to a tree, one hand on your knife, listening to the forest breathe. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls. The fire pops. A man snores. Normal sounds. Human sounds. For the first time in a long time, you feel something besides hunger or fear. You're not sure what to call it. Purpose, maybe. Not for long. Not enough to change anything. But for now, it's enough. Vercingetorix arrives when the first frost glitters on the pine needles. You don't know what you expected. Some golden-haired giant, perhaps, or a wild-eyed prophet trailing sacrifices. The man who dismounts from the black stallion is neither. He's taller than you imagined, yes, but it's the sharpness of him that strikes you. The way his gaze cuts through the camp like a blade through rotten fruit. His mustache is meticulously braided, each plate tipped with iron beads that click when he turns his head. The cloak draped over his shoulders isn't the patchwork furs of your chieftains, but a proper Roman officer's politamentum, dyed Gaulish blue and stitched with patterns your grandmother might have recognized. The camp falls silent. Not the hush of awe, but the stillness of wolves scenting a new alpha. He doesn't give speeches. Not at first. He walks among the cooking fires, pausing here to examine a sword's edge, there to ask about a man's wounds in a dialect you haven't heard since childhood. When he reaches your group, his nostrils flare at the stench of burned wagon still clinging to your clothes. You're the ones who hit the Via Agrippa supply train. A statement, not a question. His Latin has the crispness of someone who's argued in Senate chambers. The woman beside you spits. We burn their grain. Vercingetorix's mouth twitches, not quite a smile. You made them hungry. Better. He lifts a hand before anyone can swell with pride. Next time, take the grain. Starve them slower. That night, he gathers the war leaders. You linger at the edge, close enough to catch fragments between the snap of the fire. Not enough to bleed them. We must choke them. His voice carries the patience of a man explaining something for the 10th time. Burn every bridge between Narbo and Lugdunum. Poison the wells they've marked on their maps. Drive their horses into bogs. Someone mutters about Roman reprisals. The answering silence lasts 3 heartbeats. Then Vercingetorix picks up a stick and snaps it. Then another. Then a whole bundle, all at once. Alone, we break. He tossed the fragments into the flames. Together, a gesture at the roaring fire. The next morning, the camp wakes to find every tree within 50 paces carved with the same symbol. A horse rearing over a 6-pointed star. Your people's mark, but cleaner, sharper, like something meant to be stamped on coins. Work begins. Not the frenzied raids of before, but methodical strikes. A mill here grinding Roman grain to dust. A watchtower there collapsing into its own fire. Vercingetorix moves among the war bands like a physician setting bones, directing this group to harass patrols, that one to fell trees across roads. You're sent with 20 others to the salt pans near the Liger River. The task is simple: ruin what the Romans need. You spend 3 days smashing evaporation pools, dumping rendered salt into the mud, laughing as the white crystals dissolve like melting snow. A merchant's daughter watches from the reeds, her Roman-style braids coming undone. One of your party raises a bow. Vercingetorix's voice cracks like a whip. We kill soldiers, not shopkeepers. The girl flees. The salt keeps vanishing into the river. By the time you rejoin the main force, the rumors have taken shape. Caesar has turned his whole army westward. The 10th Legion marches under their bull standard, their scouts ranging ahead like hounds on a scent. The woman from the next village sharpens her knife that night, her strokes growing longer, angrier. He's leading them right to us. You watch the stars through the smoke. They were coming anyway. Alesia rises from the plains like the fist of a buried giant. The walls are older than your grandfather's stories, the gates reinforced with iron scavenged from a dozen battles. When the first Roman scouts appear on the horizon, the sentries don't even sound the alarm. Just pass around a skin of beer and watch the tiny figures scurry back the way they came. Vercingetorix summons the war council at dusk. You crouch near enough to hear. They'll surround us. Starve us. He traces circles in the dirt with his dagger. But every man they fix here is one not burning our villages. A pause, and we have friends coming. The word spreads through the camp like blood in water. The Aedui have pledged warriors. The Bellavassi are marching. Even the Aquitani, who fought your people since the first oak grew, have sent spears. For the first time since the Romans came, you let yourself imagine it. Thousands of Gauls descending on Caesar's back while he claws at Alesia's walls. The eagle standards falling, the legions breaking like waves on rock. You wake before dawn to the sound of hammers. The Romans have started their siege works, not just one wall to pen you in, but a second, greater one facing outward, studded with towers and pits full of sharpened stakes. The woman from the next village shades her eyes against the rising sun. Well, she says, at least they're taking us seriously. The laughter that follows tastes like hope and recklessness, and the last good wine before a long winter. The siege begins not with thunder, but with shovels. Day after day, you watch from the walls as the Romans dig, great concentric rings of earthworks rising like poisoned mushrooms after rain. Their engineers move with terrifying precision, transforming the landscape itself into a weapon. One trench becomes two, then three, each studded with sharpened stakes and pits disguised with fragile brush. By the second week, the outer wall stands complete, a monstrous thing 5 meters high, studded with watchtowers every 30 paces. From your perch on the ramparts, you can see the legionaries moving like ants along its length, their armor glinting in the pale autumn sun. Vercingetorix paces the battlements each dawn, his blue cloak snapping in the wind. He says nothing of the dwindling grain stores, the coughing sickness spreading through the refugee tents, the way men now measure their rations in fingernail widths of moldy bread. Instead, he points to the eastern horizon where the relief force should appear. Hold, he tells the sentries. Just hold. You learn to sleep standing up, your back against cold stone, a javelin clutched in your fist. Hunger becomes a constant companion, not the gnawing emptiness of before, but something deeper, more patient. It whispers to you at night, reminding you of the taste of fresh meat, the smell of baking bread, the way your mother's stew used to steam in the winter air. The Romans test the walls at odd hours, a feint here, a probing attack there, never committing fully, just keeping you exhausted. Their artillery rains down stones and fire pots at random intervals, forcing you to scramble for cover like rats in a burning barn. One evening, as you huddle over a meager supper of boiled leather and thistle roots, the woman from the next village presses something into your hand, a single dried plum stolen from the chief's stores. Eat it slow, she murmurs. Make them think you've got more. You suck on the pit for 3 days. When the first snow falls, it brings not relief, but despair. The cold seeps into everything, your bones, your clothes, the very stones of Alesia. Men begin disappearing at night, their bodies found days later in hidden corners, their fingers frozen around empty bowls. Then, a horn blast shatters the dawn. Not the brassy Roman calls you've grown accustomed to, but the deep-throated bellow of Gaulish carnixes. They've come. The relief force spills across the eastern hills like a flood, thousands of warriors, their banners bright against the snow. From your perch, you can make out the boar standard of the Idi, the raven of the Carnutes, even the white horse of distant tribes you've only heard in stories. A cheer rises from the walls, raw and desperate. Men pound their shields, their voices hoarse from weeks of silence. Vercingetorix appears on the ramparts, his face gaunt but alight with triumph. Today, he shouts, and the words carry on the frozen air. Today we break them. The gates swing open. You charge with the rest, your weakened legs fueled by something beyond hunger, beyond fear. This is the moment you've starved for, the reason you've endured, to see the Romans crushed between Alesia's walls and the fury of Gaul. The battle is chaos incarnate. You lose sight of Vercingetorix almost immediately, swallowed by the press of bodies. The Romans fight like cornered wolves, their formations tight, their blades flashing in the winter light. The relief force hammers at their outer defenses, while you and the garrison strike from within. For a few glorious hours, it works. You see the Roman lines waver, their officers shouting frantic orders. You taste blood in your mouth, whether yours or another's, you can't say. The snow turns to red slush beneath your feet. Then disaster. The relief force falters. Maybe it's the hunger, maybe the cold, maybe the Romans simply remember who they are. But suddenly, the tide turns. The legion's close ranks, their shields locking like the scales of some great beast. The Gaulish advance slows, then stops, then breaks apart like waves on rock. You're driven back, step by bloody step, until the gates of Alesia loom behind you once more. The retreat sounds, not the proud Carnix calls of mourning, but the shrill whistles of broken men. As you stagger inside, the gates slam shut on hundreds still fighting. Their screams follow you up the stairs, mingling with the moans of the wounded and the quiet sobbing of a boy who'll never see his homeland again. That night, no one speaks of victory. The snow falls anew, covering the dead like a shroud. The morning after the failed assault, the silence in Alesia is thicker than the fog clinging to the walls. Men move like ghosts through the ruins of their hopes, their breath steaming in the frigid air. You find the woman from the next village crouched over a dead fire, poking at the ashes with a broken dagger. "Still alive?" she asks without looking up. You show her your hands, blistered, bloody, but still gripping your sword. She snorts. Waste of energy. The Romans don't even bother attacking. They don't need to. Their walls stand unbroken, their patrols moving with the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. They can wait. They've always been good at waiting. By the third day, the hunger turns vicious. Men chew on their own belts, their boots, the leather straps of their shields. A fight breaks out near the granary, two warriors brawling over a rat carcass. They're still swinging when a Roman ballista stone arcs over the walls and reduces them to red mist and shattered bone. Vercingetorix orders the cattle slaughtered. The meat is stringy and lean, but for one fleeting day, the smell of roasting flesh drives back the despair. Then the hides are boiled into gluey broth. Then the bones are cracked for marrow. Then there's nothing left but memories of fullness. You dream of food, not grand feasts, but simple things. The way your mother's bread used to crackle when you tore it, the fat that pooled around roasted venison, the tart burst of wild berries in summer. You wake with your stomach cramping, your mouth watering, your hands clutching at empty air. The snow continues, relentless. It muffles the sounds of the dying, covers the waste in the alleys, turns the world into a featureless white wasteland. The Romans light braziers on their walls, their silhouettes dark against the flames. You can almost smell the meat they're roasting. A child dies near the south gate. No one knows whose. Someone wraps the tiny body in a cloak and places it on the wall, a silent rebuke to the Romans, or maybe the gods. By morning, the little bundle is just another snowdrift. When the horns sound again, no one reacts at first. The blasts are distant, muffled by the weather. Then a sentry shouts, a raw, broken sound that sends shivers down your spine. They've come. The relief force returns, their numbers greater than before. New tribes have joined, their banners unfamiliar but bright against the snow. They move with purpose this time, their formations tighter, their advance measured. Vercingetorix appears on the walls like a specter summoned from the stones themselves. His cloak is gone, his armor dented, but his voice still carries. Today we end this. The gates open one last time. You charge with the others, your legs weak but your heart pounding. This is it, the final roll of the dice, the last desperate gamble of a people with nothing left to lose. The battle is a blur of screams and steel. You lose the woman from the next village in the first minutes. One moment she's beside you, the next she's gone, swallowed by the press of bodies. You fight on, driven by something beyond thought, beyond fear. For a heartbeat, it seems like victory might be possible. The Roman lines bend. Their auxiliaries waver. A standard wobbles. Then the reserves arrive. Fresh legionaries pour into the fray, their armor gleaming, their shields unbroken. The Gaulish advance grinds to a halt, then collapses inward like a dying star. You're driven back, step by bloody step, until you're pressed against the gates of Alesia itself. The retreat sounds, a shrill, panicked whistle that cuts through the battle noise like a knife. The gates creak open just enough to admit the living. You stumble inside, your body numb, your mind blank. Behind you, hundreds are left to the Romans' mercy. Their screams follow you into the darkness. That night, no one speaks. The snow falls, covering the dead and the dying alike. The morning dawns with an unnatural quiet. No horns, no shouts, just the soft hiss of snow settling on blood-stained ground. You stand on the walls, your fingers numb against the frozen stone, watching as the Romans methodically clear the battlefield. They move like harvesters in a field, efficient, emotionless. Their medics tend to wounded legionaries first, then auxiliaries, then finally, if time permits, the Gaulish survivors who still show signs of life. The rest are dispatched with quick, practiced thrusts. A mercy, perhaps, compared to what awaits inside Alesia. Vercingetorix calls a council in the ruined temple that serves as his headquarters. The remaining war leaders look like walking corpses, hollow-eyed, gaunt-cheeked, their armor hanging loose on shrunken frames. You linger near the doorway, close enough to hear the whispers. 3 days of food left, if we stretch it. Wells are freezing. Sent another rider, but the ice. Vercingetorix listens in silence, his fingers tracing the edge of a Roman dagger he's taken to carrying. When the voices finally die, he speaks just 4 words. Then we end it. No one argues. The surrender is arranged with a formality that surprises you. A Roman tribune comes to the gates under a white flag, his cloak impossibly clean against the grime of siege. Terms are offered, not the wholesale slaughter you expected, but something colder, more calculated. The warriors are to lay down their arms and present themselves outside the walls at dawn. The civilians, what few remain, will be relocated. Vercingetorix himself is to surrender personally to Caesar. The tribune delivers this last part with a smirk you'd kill him for if you had the strength. Night falls like a shroud. What happens next will be told in songs for centuries, though none will capture the truth of it. Vercingetorix dons his finest armor, the blue cloak now more gray than indigo, the iron beads in his mustache missing half their number. He walks through the camp one final time, stopping here to clasp a shoulder, there to murmur a name. When he reaches your group, his gaze lingers on the woman's empty space beside you. She fought well, he says. You nod, your throat too tight to speak. At the gates, the surviving warriors form 2 ragged lines. Some weep openly. Others stare straight ahead, their faces carved from stone. Vercingetorix walks between them, his head high, his stride steady despite the hunger, despite the cold, despite the weight of everything ending. Then, something unexpected. A young warrior steps forward, his hands empty. Let me go with you. Another joins him. Then another. Soon dozens stand ready to follow their chief into captivity. Vercingetorix shakes his head. Your deaths would feed no one. He gestures to the silent city behind you. Their lives might. The gates open. Sunrise paints the snow in shades of gold and pink, a cruel parody of dawn. The Romans stand in perfect formation, their armor polished, their faces unreadable. At their center, borne on a litter by 6 Numidian slaves, sits Caesar, smaller than you imagined, his famous baldness hidden beneath a laurel crown. Vercingetorix approaches alone. The moment stretches, Gaul's last free chieftain standing before Rome's conquering general. You expect speeches, grand gestures, something worthy of the histories. There is nothing. Vercingetorix unbuckles his sword belt and lets it fall into the snow. Caesar nods, waves a hand. The legions erupt in cheers that shake the frozen earth. You don't watch as they lead Vercingetorix away. You turn instead to the faces around you. The old men who will never see home again. The children who won't remember it. The warriors who've survived only to become someone else's property. The Romans call it surrender. You call it the day the world changed. The chains come at dawn. Cold iron shackles that bite into flesh already raw from hunger. The Romans move through what's left of Alesia like butchers sorting meat, dividing the living into 3 piles. Those who will die today. Those who will die slowly. Those who might be worth keeping. You end up in the middle group, still breathing, still able to walk, but with that hollow look in your eyes the slave takers recognize as broken but functional. A Roman quartermaster prods your ribs with a stylus. This one's got a few years left, he tells his scribe. The scribe doesn't look up as he notes it down. They march you out through the ruined gates, past the smoldering remains of the siege engines, past the corpses stacked like firewood. The snow has stopped, leaving behind a world scrubbed clean and glittering with frost. It would be beautiful if not for the smell. The chains connect 20 men together, wrist to wrist to wrist, forming a human necklace that stretches half a stadium long. At the front, a legionary tests the links with a practiced jerk. At the back, an old man stumbles and is dragged until he finds his feet. No one helps him. No one speaks. You walk, Days blur into weeks. The road unspools beneath your feet like a never-ending scroll. At night, they herd you into pens originally built for livestock, the straw still smelling of sheep shit and old hay. The food is a thin gruel that tastes of nothing but salt and resignation. You learn to swallow without tasting, to sleep through the screams of men dreaming in languages they're already forgetting. Then the mountains appear, jagged teeth biting at the sky. The quarry sprawls beneath them like an open wound, its limestone cliffs scarred by decades of picks and chisels. From a distance, it almost looks like a city, terraces and ramps and pulleys forming their own strange architecture. Up close, it's just dust and pain and the endless ringing of hammers. They assign you to the transport detail, carrying cut stones from the quarry floor to the loading ramp. The blocks are heavy enough to make your vision swim, your muscles scream, your spine pop like green wood in a fire. The overseer marks your tally with notches on a wax tablet. 10 stones equals 1 ladle of water. 20 earns an extra fistful of barley. You stop counting after the first month. The work reshapes you, not just your body, though your shoulders broaden even as your belly shrinks, but your mind. Thoughts become simple things. The next step, the next breath, the next stone. The past feels like something that happened to another person in another world. Even the faces from Alesia, the woman, your cousin, Vercingetorix himself, fade into a haze, like figures seen through frosted glass. Then one day, as you're hauling a particularly stubborn slab, your fingers slip on the wet stone. The block crashes down, taking a chunk of your left pinky with it. The pain is bright and immediate, a white-hot lance shooting up your arm. You stare at the blood welling from the stump, at the bit of finger still twitching in the dust. The overseer sighs, pulls a knife from his belt. Hold still. He sears the wound shut with the blade's heated edge. The smell of your own burning flesh makes your stomach heave, but you don't cry out. You've seen men whipped for less. That night, as you lie in the barracks nursing your hand, a fellow slave, a dark-skinned man from some southern tribe, presses a damp cloth to your forehead. It could be worse, he murmurs in broken Latin. They could have taken the whole hand. You want to ask him why he bothers. Why any of you bother? But the words die in your throat. Instead, you watch the moonlight filter through the cracks in the roof, painting thin silver lines across the dirt floor. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. The next morning, you go back to work. Because what else is there? The years pass like stones dropping into a bottomless well. You measure time now in calluses, the thick pads on your palms, the permanent grooves where the hammer's handle has worn its own home into your flesh. The quarry dust has settled so deep in your lungs that you cough up chalky phlegm every morning, each hack sounding like 2 rocks grinding together. The dark-skinned man dies in the 3rd winter. A fever takes him quickly. One day he's swinging a pick beside you. The next he's a stiff shape under a threadbare blanket. The Romans let you drag his body to the lime pits, where the quicklime will dissolve flesh from bone in hours. You whisper the only prayer you remember over him, though you're not sure which of your childhood gods it belongs to. New slaves arrive with each spring thaw. Some are Gauls from tribes you've never heard of. Others are strangers from lands beyond the sea. Dark-haired men who speak in musical tongues, fair-skinned boys with eyes like winter skies. They all share the same wide stare when they first see the quarry's yawning mouth. You don't bother learning their names anymore. One evening, as you're gnawing on your daily bread, hard as slate, just as tasteless, a commotion breaks out near the overseer's hut. A group of new arrivals is being processed, mostly young men, but one figure stands out, a Roman in a stained toga, his hands bound behind him. Political prisoner, someone mutters. Failed some Senate vote. The Roman holds himself differently than the others. Even in chains, his back stays straight, his chin lifted like he's still walking the forum. When the overseer barks an order, he responds in perfect Latin. I am a citizen of Rome. I demand. The whip cracks before he finishes. You watch with detached interest as the proud Roman learns the same lessons you did years ago. How to bend, how to break, how to measure his worth in stones moved per day. By the week's end, his toga is gone, replaced by the same rough tunic everyone wears. His hands blister. His shoulders peel. That unshakable voice grows hoarse, then silent. It should feel like justice. It doesn't. Summer brings a new overseer, a thick-necked brute from some eastern province. He introduces himself with a lash to everyone's backs and a new quota: 30 stones per day or no rations. That first week, 3 men collapse from exhaustion. The overseer leaves them where they fall as a lesson. You're hauling your 30th stone of the day when the pain starts, a hot knife twisting between your ribs with every breath. By sunset, you're burning up, your vision swimming, your legs refusing to hold you. The world narrows to the pounding in your skull and the metallic taste of blood in your mouth. They drag you to the sick hut, a low, reeking shack where men go to either recover or die. The medicus, a Greek slave with 3 fingers missing, prods your chest and mutters something about lung rot. He gives you a cup of bitter tea and turns away before you can ask if you'll live. As you drift in fever dreams, the past comes rushing back, not as memories, but as sensations. The smell of wet earth after spring rains, the sound of your mother's loom clicking in the pre-dawn dark, the way your cousin used to snort when laughing too hard. The village, the forest, the taste of fresh-killed venison, the weight of a spear in your hands. When you wake, the Greek is gone. Moonlight slants through the hut's single window, painting silver stripes on the dirt floor. Outside, the quarry sleeps, the hammers stilled, the carts at rest. For the first time in years, you hear nothing but the wind. You think of Vercingetorix. Rumor says Caesar paraded him through Rome in golden chains before strangling him in the Tullianum. You wonder if he saw the sky one last time. You think of the woman from the next village, her body left to rot outside Alesia's walls. You think of the dark-skinned man dissolving in quicklime, and you realize something strange. You miss them more than you miss your gods. Dawn finds you still breathing. The Greek seems surprised when he checks on you. Tough old bastard, he grumbles, pressing another bitter cup into your hands. You drink. You live. Because what else is there? The quarry awaits.